Hey everybody! Today's lesson is going to be on sexual feelings and behavior. By the end of the lesson, you will be able to explain the physical, emotional, and social impacts of sexual relationships. And we're going to be talking about what skills you can use to make healthy decisions about your sexuality. So during this stage in life, it is natural and it's also an important part of human biology and behavior, and that is sexuality. During puberty, your sexual development speeds up, and as a result, adolescents experience physical changes, unfamiliar, intense drives, and emotions. Now, this is something that is very new and different, and so we want to give you the most information on it so then you can navigate this next stage of life safely. The factors that influence your behavior regarding sex would be values, views, beliefs. So these different things are going to come together to form your different behaviors regarding sexual activity. The first factor we're going to talk about is cultural and family background. So everyone's cultural and family background is going to be different from yours. So that's why we shouldn't just gauge our decisions based on our friends, because there's a lot of different things that are going to be specific to you. So it could be the context of appropriate sexual activity. Is this meant for marriage or a committed relationship? The appropriate age for engaging in sexual activity. How, when, and with whom sexual activity should be discussed, and the role sexual activity plays in a relationship. The next factor regarding sexual behavior is family and peer relationships. Teen relationships have a significant influence on the decisions they make about sexual activity. One important influence is the quality of these relationships. So teens with positive, stable family relationships are less likely to be sexually active. This is also the case for teens with positive, healthy peer relationships. So if you have those relationships with friends, family members that are very healthy, open communication, you have a increased chance of not having sexual activity at a younger age. The lower quality relationships increase the chance a teen will choose to be sexually active. And this could be that maybe you don't feel comfortable talking about sexual activity with your parents, and so maybe you're getting your information from other children at school or other people in your community that maybe you might be misinformed. Also, this could be an attention-seeking behavior. So if you don't have those strong relationships, you might seek attention elsewhere. Relationships also influence what a teen perceives as norms surrounding sexual activity. So if teens think their peers are sexually active, they are more likely to be sexually active themselves. In reality, however, most teens are not sexually active. So if you have everyone in your school who's talking about it or saying that they all are being sexually active, you would most likely then feel peer pressured to become sexually active yourself. The third factor influencing sexual behavior is media. Between social media, music, online videos, and TV, teens use media as many as 9 hours per day. This exposure to media can shape a person's values, expectations, attitudes, and behavior. If you ever go on your phone, you can actually go to settings and then find out how much time you're spending on your phones, and then more specifically, how much time you're spending on your media apps. So you can look at how much time you're spending on Instagram or YouTube or Snapchat or Twitter, and you can actually see how much time you are spending. So if you tell your parents that you don't have enough time, make sure you check your usage on your phone, and then maybe you actually do, and you just have to take a little bit of time away from one of those apps. As a result, media with sexual content has an enormous influence on teen sexual activity. In the US, about 80% of music videos contain sexual or sexually suggestive content. Sexual content in the media often portrays unrealistic and casual attitudes towards sex. So rarely in movies or TV shows, do they show couples talking about decisions to have sex, contraception, or consequences? So what happens if there happens to be pregnancy or an STI? Those different conversations usually are not had on a movie or a TV show. Whenever you are watching a music video or a YouTube video, maybe a TV show, or it could be a TV commercial, I want you to ask yourself these couple of questions. So who created this? Was it a company, an individual? Was it an anonymous source? So think about who was making this video. The next thing you're going to ask yourself is, why did they make this? Is it to inform, to change your mind or behavior, or to get you to buy something? The next question is, who is the target audience? Kids, teens, or adults? Boys or girls? Students, athletes? And then what makes this source credible? Does it have information from a content expert? Does it have a scientific study attached to it? Were there details left out? And if so, why? So think about, does it only represent one side? And does it give you the full information? So we want you to think about these things regarding media, because there's a lot of information out there, and we want you to be smart individuals who can take information on the internet, think about it, maybe find another couple of sources to maybe back up that one source, or maybe find something that goes against it. And then what you can do with this information is you could talk to someone that you trust about it. So you could double check and say, hey, I'm not so sure about this information. What do you think about it? Or you could ask a teacher or someone else that you trust, just to get all the information to make informed decisions. The last influence on sexual behavior would be goals and values. Teens who set and work toward clear goals are more likely to avoid risky behaviors, including sexual activity. Clear goals bring into focus the importance of making responsible decisions each day. So each daily, weekly, and monthly decision can impact whether people achieve their goals. So think about what you're doing today and how what you're doing today is going to impact your goals and decisions for the future. So let's think small scale. Let's just think about school. So this is a quarter class. So every single day matters. Doing your work, going to live class, submitting your assignments, everything like that, all those different efforts that you're putting in are going to add up to points. And then at the end of the quarter, you'll see your grade. And you'll see that students who have put in the time and the effort on those daily, weekly, and monthly decisions, they're going to have better outcomes at the end of the quarter. And then larger scale, you can think about what each day, week, and month, how it's going to impact your future in the long run. So school might be over when you're 18, but the grades that you get could impact maybe what colleges you get into or what job opportunities you're offered later in life. So some examples would be, having clear goals for the future can make you less likely to risk the short or long-term consequences of teen pregnancy or STIs. So thinking about how having a child right now or having a sexually transmitted infection would affect your future. For the next couple of minutes, I want you to reflect upon your goals by the decade. So get a piece of paper, make this chart, and say goals by 20, 30, 40, 50, and 60. So for example, maybe goals by 20 would be that you would graduate college or have a certain certification that helps you in a career that you want to have. Maybe by 20 you want to have a car or maybe an apartment or a house. Maybe you want to be in a committed relationship, if that is a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or married. Goals by 30, maybe you want to start having children, or maybe you would like to be married by this point. Maybe you want to travel. Maybe you want to see so many certain countries or states by this age. And then I want you to think about 40s and 50s and 60s. So write down specific goals that you have for this decade. Now, this is important because I want you to be thinking not just about today, not just about tomorrow or next week. We're thinking about long-term goals in general and how our decisions that we make today are going to impact all of these different goals throughout our decade and our lives. We just went over the factors that influence sexual behavior, and now we're going to talk about the consequences of sexual relationships. So sexual activity have many effects on each person in a romantic relationship. The consequences of sexual activity are physical, emotional, and social, and some of them can last for a person's lifetime. The first consequence of sexual activity we're going to talk about is physical. So the first physical one would be pregnancy, and then you could also get a STI or a sexually transmitted infection. And some of these STIs, as we learned from the previous lesson, they can be cured and some cannot be cured. So if you have an STI such as herpes or HPV or HIV, then you will not be able to get rid of this infection, and it could cause long-term side effects. And also, it could also possibly infect other people. So maybe your sexual partners could also be infected with an STI, and sometimes even your children. Or some of these STIs can cause scarring on certain reproductive organs, and it can cause infertility. Another consequence could be social. So sometimes peers view sexually active teens as they could view you negatively. Another one would be conflict in family relationships if your family disapproves of teens' decisions. So let's say that your parents find out that you are having sexual activity and they do not approve. This could cause a lot of conflict in your family or maybe with your siblings. And then the last one is usually when you have this person that you're having sexual activity with, you're going to spend more time with them, and you're going to have less time to spend with your friends, your family, and maybe your siblings. And so spending a lot of time with this one person could impact your relationships, and maybe you might find that your friends or your family members or your siblings, they don't see you as much or talk to you as much, and they feel like they don't know you. So whatever you do get in a relationship, just remember that it's really important to keep in contact and not just have that one person, but also keep your support system bigger. So have your family and your friends and your siblings keeping a close contact with everyone. The last consequence is going to be emotional. So there is a hormone called oxytocin, and it's released by the brain during several different situations. This includes in-person conversations, holding hands, sexual activity, labor, childbirth, and breastfeeding. Oxytocin, often called the cuddling hormone, affects the brain by causing sensations of bonding, closeness, and nurturing. Most teens are not ready to handle the intense emotions associated with sexual relationship, like jealousy or vulnerability. Many teens feel overwhelmed by these new emotions. And another stressful situation could be if you happen to become pregnant or contract an STI. That would be a very stressful situation that your emotions may not be able to handle. Just coming up with the decision with what to do next. So the lesson prior to this one that we talked about, are you going to become a parent? Are you going to have the child and then maybe give the child up for adoption? And then what to do with that STI. Will you have to go to the doctor? Will you have to tell your parents about it? All these different things are very stressful. And then the last one would be if there happens to be a breakup between you and this person that you're having sexual activity with. After forming that intimate bond, there's going to be probably a harder period of time after that breakup than you would have if you were not having sexual activity with them. According to experts, the most responsible decision teens can make related to sexual activity is sexual abstinence, which is refraining from sexual activity. Some of the benefits from being abstinent from sexual activity would be protection from pregnancy and STIs, emotional maturity, time for personal growth in relationships, and greater enjoyment of non-sexual activities. If you do decide to engage in sexual activity, with your partner, you should discuss their view on sex and ways to handle STIs or unplanned pregnancy. So before engaging in sexual activity, you should be able to talk to this person and just think about, well, what if one of us were to have a sexually transmitted infection? How would we go about protecting ourselves from contracting an STI? And then what if there happens to be an unplanned pregnancy? What would we do? Would we parent the child? Would we give the child up for adoption? Would we ask a family member to help us take care of this child? So there's a lot of different things to discuss. The next part is to respect the other person's decision about sex. So let's say that you're talking to this person and you have conflicting views on if you would like to engage in sexual activity or not. If you have different views, then you probably should not be with that person. You probably might want to maybe talk about it more, or maybe you may not want to date that person anymore because your views on sex do not match up. Third, you want to agree on the methods for carrying out the decision. So if you agree on having sexual relations, then you want to talk about different contraceptive methods that you would be using, or if you agree to remain abstinent, how are you going to keep that goal of remaining abstinent? And then lastly, you want to share information about your sexual history. So if you have an STI, you need to share this with your partner and then also work on those prevention methods so then your partner does not contract that same STI.